The story of the Roman Empire begins not with a loud bang, but with the quiet birth of a modest city on the banks of the Tiber River, where legend says twin brothers Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf, laid the foundations of what would become one of the grandest civilizations the world has ever known. From these humble beginnings, Rome grew from a city-state ruled by kings into a republic where power was shared among wealthy elites, soldiers, and politicians. Over centuries, through sheer determination, skill, and often ruthless conquest, this young city expanded its territory, stretching its influence across the Italian peninsula and eventually to the vast shores of the Mediterranean Sea. People from all over, scholars, farmers, soldiers, slaves, merchants, all flocked to Rome or found themselves under its far-reaching control, living lives filled with the drama, excitement, and demands of empire. The bustling streets of ancient Rome buzzed with energy. Markets overflowed with goods from distant lands, while forums were filled with heated political debates. Poets recited verses, and citizens prepared for grand spectacles that defined Roman culture. Central to this spectacle was the Colosseum, a massive amphitheater built to impress and entertain. Commissioned by Emperor Vespasian around 70 AD and finished under his son Titus in 80 AD, the Colosseum was no mere arena. It was a symbol of Rome's power, engineering genius, and commitment to public amusement. This enormous elliptical structure, capable of seating up to 50,000 spectators, rose out of the heart of the city like a stone giant, its arches and columns crafted with careful precision and elegance. It was built not just to host fights, but to project an image of invincible might and unity, a physical reminder that Rome was a civilization of grand scale and order. When the crowd gathered, the air was thick with anticipation. The roar of voices rising as trumpets sounded, and the procession of gladiators, wild beasts, and performers entered the arena. The sun would glare brightly on the stone, the dust would swirl in the air, and the spectators, from the poorest plebeians to the richest nobles, were united in a shared experience of wonder and mortal danger. Gladiators were the heart of this spectacle, and their lives were at once tragic and heroic. Most were slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals condemned to fight, but some were free men who chose the arena for fame and fortune. They trained in special schools, honing their skills with swords, nets, tridents, or heavy armor, depending on their fighting style. Each gladiator was a character in this grand drama, their battles choreographed yet fiercely real, their survival often uncertain. The crowd lived for their courage, their skill to dance with death in the grand circle of the Colosseum. The clashing of steel and cries of men echoed not just as entertainment, but as a reflection of Roman values: bravery, strength, endurance, and honor. For a fallen gladiator, death was imminent, but victory could bring freedom, gifts, or adoration. Some gladiators became heroes, their names chanted, their likenesses captured in mosaics and graffiti. Yet behind the cheers and applause lay harsh realities. The lives of these combatants often ended too soon, their personal stories mostly lost to time, remembered only in the dust of the arena. Emperors, the rulers who stood at the pinnacle of Roman society, understood exactly what this spectacle meant. They were not merely busy with governance and military campaigns, they were showmen and politicians who relied on the games to cement their power and keep the populace content. Emperors like Nero, who indulged in extravagant performances, or Trajan, who celebrated his victories with festivals lasting over 100 days, used the Colosseum and its events to demonstrate their generosity and strength. These games were a way of saying, "Look how mighty Rome is, and how the emperor cares for his people." Through bread and circuses, free grain and thrilling entertainment, the emperors secured peace and distracted from the tensions within the empire. The Colosseum was their stage, a majestic tool of politics and power balanced with awe and cruelty. But Roman life was more than just gladiators and emperors. The city was a tapestry of different lives interwoven by ambition, duty, fear, and hope. The wealthy patricians lived in magnificent villas overlooking the city, their days filled with banquets, politics, and philosophy. The vast majority, plebeians and slaves, struggled in narrow, crowded insulae, apartment buildings often plagued by fire and collapse. Soldiers marched thousands of miles across harsh lands, conquering provinces that stretched from Britain's foggy coasts to the sunlit deserts of Egypt. Farmers grew olives and grapes, artisans crafted exquisite goods, and priests tended to the many gods worshipped in temples dotting the city. Romans loved stories and rituals. Festivals and religious ceremonies gave rhythm and meaning to their lives, reminding them of their connection to gods, ancestors, and the very idea of Rome itself. The empire's influence stretched far beyond these stones and crowds. It shaped the very foundations of our modern world. Roman law introduced the idea that laws should be written and applied equally, a cornerstone of today's legal systems. The architecture that still captivates millions. The arches, concrete domes, aqueducts that carried water over miles, laid the groundwork for modern building techniques. Roads, famously stretching thousands of miles, connected distant places, contributing to the idea of a unified state. The Roman calendar evolved directly into the 1 billions used today. Even the ideals of republic governance, checks and balances, citizenship, and public service find their roots in Roman concepts. In entertainment, the echoes of the Colosseum can be felt today in stadium sports and theatrical productions, a reminder of how human fascination with spectacle endures. Languages like Italian, French, Spanish, and Portuguese are descendants of Latin, the language spoken by Roman citizens centuries ago. This tapestry of history is alive with stories both grand and personal, of emperors who wielded immense power, and gladiators who fought for survival, of citizens who dreamed beneath great marble columns, and slaves who hoped for freedom. Rome was not just an empire. It was a vast, living world where courage, ambition, cruelty, and beauty existed, side by side. Its legacy continues to whisper to us through ancient ruins, legal ideas, languages, and the very shape of our lives. As one stands today beneath the towering ruins of the Colosseum, it is easy to imagine the roar of the crowd, the tension of life and death in the arena, and the unyielding spirit of a people who built an empire that still feels close and real, even after 2,000 years. If this story has sparked your imagination and brought the rich world of Rome closer to your heart, please like, subscribe, follow, and share to keep these ancient tales alive. There are countless more stories waiting to be told, each one a doorway to understanding the past and yourself a little better. Your support helps keep history vibrant and accessible for everyone who loves to learn and dream.